Hello and welcome to our second annual Black Friday Cyber Monday Unpacked Summit. My name is Gina Ellison and I lead the partner marketing and events team here at ShipBob. We are so excited to hear from experts from across our partner ecosystem as we unpack the numbers behind the most successful Cyber Week ever. We saw that billions were spent over the Cyber 5 period. Consumers embraced buy now, pay later. Mobile had its biggest share of order volume yet, and more shoppers embraced omni-channel shopping. A few housekeeping items before we get started. We'll be giving away $50 gift cards throughout the event to attendees asking the most interesting questions. So stay active in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from, and we'll be announcing those winners throughout the day. With that, I'm so excited to announce our keynote speaker today, Rick Watson. Rick is an e-commerce legend. He founded RMW Commerce after spending 20 years as an e-commerce technology entrepreneur and operator exclusively in the e-commerce space with companies like Channel Advisor, BarnesandNoble.com, Merchant Tree, and Pitney Bowes. I'm really excited to hear some of the tips and insights that Rick is going to present today. So Rick, with that, the stage is all yours.
Thanks so much, Gina. I appreciate you setting everything up. Well, welcome everyone to our BCFM Unpacked Summit here, hosted by ShipBob. My name is Rick Watson. I'm CEO and founder of RMW Commerce. As Gina did such a great job at the introduction. My firm recently did some research on the supply chain industry, particularly around retailers and brands, and how do they grow from where they're starting out, where they're trying to prove who they are, to the enterprise level. What are the tools, processes, and things that are required to do that? What are some of the things that you should be thinking about? The research also had a number of interesting insights here, and part of it just sort of leads us through the journey of, we've been on this crazy ride the past 5 years, all of us. And so I think that's been interesting. The hangover from COVID, increasing costs of customer acquisition, rise in interest rates means less free money for everyone. And then consumers are, in particular in the past year, have been squeezed by inflation. Discretionary income is declining. In the meantime, that means that consumers are shopping slightly less, especially for discretionary items. Things that are required, like groceries and housing and healthcare and childcare and pet care and things like this, like you have to do it every month. But for discretionary items, it becomes harder. And so if there are less people shopping, that means the traffic to your website is less. Less people are walking in stores for those discretionary items. You need to be able to grow your business during that period at the same time of reducing your costs. And what are some of and anyone who's been in e-commerce for 5 minutes knows that one of the biggest line items on your profit and loss report is supply chain costs. And so how can you continue to grow while at the same time keeping your supply chain costs level, or at least not having them grow linearly with your growth? That's also important. And by the same token, consumers also need a great experience. And so you need capabilities for your business. And so the report really explains and really follows the journey of growing merchants that are struggling doing that. And so some of the pains that we uncovered with the report include things like inventory accuracy, scaling and workflow issues. And I'll talk a little bit about workforce. That's really one of the hardest things for a growing merchant to manage. And if you think about the balance and dance that always happens between, oh, marketing is pushing this promotion, who knows about it? Did someone just go into the website back office and add a promotion code, and now it ends up on Slick Deals, and we have all these more orders than we were expected? So all of this are supply chain problems. not just supply chains from a throughput point of view. Of course, your 3PL might fall over if you're using a 3PL, or maybe you built a warehouse or have a local facility that you're using. You might have labor shortages. Your workers may not be as efficient. And so that's one of the biggest problems as we surveyed merchants, um, that they had to deal with. The other thing is, clearly online inventory accuracy is super important. One of the things that distinguishes, I would say, growing SMB merchants from merchants that are starting to enter the middle market and have sort of passed their product market fit phase is they're in multiple channels. And so the software that they use to manage a single channel on their website and maybe one marketplace like Amazon is sometimes quite different than the software they use to manage uh, an omni-channel experience. And so, what are the first things people start to do is they start to move some of that inventory into a spreadsheet. Well, as soon as you do that, then your inventory isn't up to date, and you may not know where the inventory is, even if you know necessarily what your stock levels are on a global basis. Do you know what shelf it's on? Do you know how many items are on that shelf? Do you know when when you're receiving your next set of pallets for replenishment? Do you know where it's going to go next? The same item, is it in multiple shelves throughout your warehouse? And how do you know that accuracy? So that inventory accuracy is not only important from a customer promise point of view, it's also important from a picking and packing point of view, because the worst thing that could happen is you spend all this money on marketing. Customer goes through your website, they finally convert, they're expecting the order, the picker downloads the orders for the day. They go to the shelf, it's not there. That's about the most expensive mistake you can make in retail. Other than obviously a return is bad too, but this is pretty bad because it's the worst experience. Unlike a return, they never even got the item, so they're certainly going to keep shopping somewhere else. So inventory accuracy, I think, is super important. Shipping rates is another important pain point that we find with merchants as they grow. Clearly, FedEx, UPS, all the carriers have rack rates. UPS has their DAP program, which allows certain tools access to discounted rates. USPS has Ground Advantage and other types of tools, but a lot of those rate discounts are based on your volume. Well, if you're a single growing merchant, you're not going to have the same, like, who has the best shipping rates in the world? Well, probably Amazon. Well, no one's going to get Amazon's rates, but how do you get better rates that are even perhaps better than the volume that you have? Can you get better discounts than even the volume that you have today? And working with third parties can help doing that. Another big supply chain issue that we uncovered with merchants is, how do you support additional channels? And so every new channel you go to, whether it's TikTok shop or your store or delivering to a wholesale outlet, like a wholesale buy that Target or Walmart made for you, or shipping your product overseas to be housed, um, for your stock in Europe. All of those things not only have marketing and compliance and other types of issues, but supply chain is a core part of that journey for you as a business to expand your sales channels. You need to have supply chain capabilities to do that. So that's super important, and definitely something that growing merchants often don't have a lot of experience managing. Um, the other thing is sort of customization and unboxing. As the number of SKUs you have is, if it's small, then providing that experience to every customer is usually pretty easy because you don't have that many customers and your volume is low. But as your business scales, providing that same experience is difficult. And some of the challenges that they have are, as you look for finding different solutions, people have different choices. And so, like, if you're running into a wall, like I can't support these different channels, my rates aren't good enough, my inventory is inaccurate, and any of these, like, does this sound familiar? We found that customers are, or brands and merchants are finding different solutions, and they're like making do with what they have. Like literally, the first thing that people try to do is hire more pickers. So we don't have enough staffing. We don't know how to predict it. Let's just hire more of them. Um, Also, switching to a different provider, using a local mom and pop logistics provider. Like maybe it's one in your neighborhood, maybe it's one in your city, maybe it's one nearby. Um, Outsourcing to a global 3PL. They're obviously big. Even Amazon MCF is a third party logistics provider. Everyone knows who they are. The tools are pretty good. And that's maybe the next thing they might try. And the point is, as you look through these different solutions that you might try or hear about, all of them comes with different pros and cons. And those pros and cons can help you differentiate yourself online, or in some cases, they could actually remove some of the experience points that you actually had for your business when you're smaller. But the big provider that you're using now, it's either too expensive to have that customized level of service, or they just don't offer it at all. Like, I think everyone probably knows if you ship on an Amazon FBA, it's going to show up in a brown Amazon box. If you ship with Amazon MCF, it's going to come in their white box. And it's great if you have that. If you like that white box, that's a great customized experience. If you if your idea of a customized experience is a little bit beyond the white box and the standard crinkle paper that Amazon includes, um, then your customers might notice a change in their experience as they do that. And so, as you kind of look for facilities, some things to consider are obviously footprint. Can they handle the volume? Do you have access to rates? And can you connect to all the digital channels easily? I mean, the 3PL industry is not a new industry. It's been around for 50 plus years, mostly from a retail point of view. The backbone of retail in North America, in particular, is based on a technology standard called EDI, or electronic data interchange, which is not really a technology that anyone knows anything about if they're traditionally been built working on a Shopify or BigCommerce or a WooCommerce store. Um, EDI is not really a native format for any of those platforms. So having access to those channels through a typical 3PL usually involves a lot of custom integration projects. And so as you um, work through those facilities, you run across issues. For instance, a global 3PL, you may not be able to customize the solution as much. You might hear about, like, oh, I want to manage my warehouse better. Maybe I should be thinking about an enterprise warehouse management system. And look, the goal here is not to say that these solutions aren't good, but that these solutions have trade-offs. And particularly for a merchant that doesn't have a huge amount of capital, your requirements are different than an enterprise merchant that has access to a lot of capital. You don't have 6 months and hundreds of thousands of dollars to implement a warehouse management system, even though maybe in 5, 10 years, it might actually be a good idea. And so we're speaking to brands that are maybe in between 5 and 10,000 parcels a month, up to 100,000 ish parcels a month, and maybe slightly above that. And so that's really a sweet spot for this types of solutions that we're talking about today. Um, and so if you look through, like, what are the different types of solutions that you can go do? You can own a facility, you can build one yourself, you can go to a local 3PL, um, you can install an enterprise warehouse management system. All those have different capital requirements, footprints, customization capabilities, and many of them, I mean, to be honest, are not a great fit for a growing business that's sort of beyond the startup stage, but not quite at the enterprise stage. And so, what I see sort of the ideal solution for this kind of merchant has a few different characteristics. Number one, like the capital expenses are low. The footprint is global because you need to be global. It needs to be highly customizable, or at least as customizable as what you're doing today, because that's the customer experience and unboxing you're trying to support, similar to, unboxing an Apple iPhone or something like that. It needs to support your volume requirements and support the channels that you want to do. And so I think those are really the needs that we're talking about here, and really has talked through the report as we go through here. So, um, one of the solutions. So I mentioned these are the characteristics of the solution, and really part of my goal here is like, okay, let's give that a name. And the name I gave to that solution is what I'm calling the fulfillment accelerator. You hear these names like, what's in a name? You have 3PLs. You know what a 3PL is. It's usually four walls in a warehouse facility. 4PL is usually more like an outsourced network of facilities, but it doesn't come with a lot of expertise because usually the operations are are outsourced to a particular facility. Fulfillment accelerator, I kind of view as sort of a hybrid between all these solutions. It is not only you know, facility footprint and the markets that you want. It has the channel capabilities you want. It's cloud based, so it's easy to adopt and it's low cost to adopt. And it has the volume and scale that you're looking for. And so that's really my sort of banner that I give the market for this new category of solutions. And I really think, as a lot of this research is here, there are lots of solutions that could fit in this category that meet those requirements. And so, ShipBob's own partner network has a whole bunch of solutions that plug into ShipBob itself that I believe are also in this fulfillment accelerator category, because their goal is to help you get in front of more customers at the volume and price and cost uh, criteria that you have for the market. So, um, in addition to the software and services, most people that are in this bucket also need expertise, because it's kind of interesting as your business grows and you're working with a certain supplier or a certain service provider. If you're growing faster than the rest of their customers, a lot of times what happens is that you then become the biggest customer that your service provider has, which is, it seems like it's a good thing because then you get a lot of attention, but actually it's kind of a bad thing, because your provider is now learning from you and not the other way around. And so expertise from a provider that handles bigger customers than where you are now, but still can meet your requirements at the price performance ratio you're looking for. That's kind of the ideal service provider that you should be looking for, particularly if you're in this segment of the market, because you can learn from them. You can get access to better rates from them. You can get better capabilities from them. By the way, they've managed bigger warehouses than you have. Maybe if you've only been managing a 50,000 square foot facility and that's the biggest warehouse you've ever managed, maybe they've managed a million square foot facility. And so you can see how you're going to be able to spend the next 3 to 5 years with this provider. So that's why I think expertise is also important to these things. Um, to me, in order to be called a fulfillment accelerator solution at all, I think there are a number of requirements that are needed. Um, One is inventory is critical because it's really the foundation of the business. Any brand or retailer knows that inventory can make or kill a business. You have too much, and you're going to have to discount it later to sell through it or sell it off to jobbers. Too little, and you're not going to capture the market opportunity, or you can't promise it to as many channels as you want to promise. You need low rates, and we've talked about some of these things already. Easy to adopt, high throughput, the ability to scale in multiple channels, and the ability to go globally. These are all things that I think are critical. If you're starting a business today and you're a brand, the buyer just kind of assumes you do these things. And without a provider that gives you these things in one place, I think it becomes a lot of challenges. And like, look, depending on the audience, there's probably a mix of people in the audience. Some of you are operators, like, this is what I'm doing today. Yes, I'm having these problems and I'm looking for solutions that have this issue, or maybe you're a customer. But you also have to sometimes convince someone else to, like, okay, a fulfillment accelerator sounds interesting, but how do I explain it in a way that my CEO will understand, or my head of digital will understand, or even my board of directors will understand if I'm a CEO? Everyone has a boss somewhere, whether that boss is capital that you're trying to raise, or a direct line level manager. There are three key benefits to fulfillment accelerators that I think gets you out of the weeds of, like, oh, um, it supports EDI so that we can interact with Target, and we can't do that today. That conversation usually only goes so far with the CEO. The three things that I think that are really important are: one is operating leverage, which essentially means that as your revenue grows, your costs don't grow in the same linear fashion. Second is customer loyalty. So not only will you be able to acquire customers more efficiently, but they're going to stay longer because you're giving them a better experience, meaning their parcels arrive on time, the unboxing experience is great, and it doesn't there are fewer mistakes because your inventory is more accurate and you're making fewer mistakes in the warehouse. So all those things I think are super important from that um, point of view. And so our goal is to really meet brands where they are in terms of uh, elements, and evaluating these solutions. I think the requirements really speak to what's needed there. And look, it's funny being in e-commerce. If you spend more than 5 minutes on Twitter or social media or in any shop talk or any of these things, it's like you're asking your buddies, like, who's your 3PL? Um, I had a disaster with my current 3PL. They lost all my inventory. 3PLs is like a four-letter word sometimes. And so adopting any new solution, trusting your inventory with, I think is super important. And so one of the things that I find that's important for the fulfillment accelerator category is the solution should be able to work regardless of where your inventory is. If the inventory is in your facility and you're managing the shipping of it, or if the solution has your inventory in an outsourced facility, whether maybe it's in Canada where you don't have a presence, or in Europe where you don't have a presence, or an area of the country you don't have a presence, the software should integrate it all together. And so to me, trust of a provider comes from track record, who their customers are, and transparency of the software. Am I always able to tell where my inventory is, how many workers are working on my solutions one day, what are my SLAs, are they being met? Um, those are all super important, because most people have been burned by a shipping provider before. They're worried about loss of control. And like, as you evaluate these solutions, the report really hones in on these are the important questions to ask. Um, and I think those are elements uh, there too. So that's really what I wanted to get across from the report today. As you can tell, it's a topic I'm super passionate about. I think the category can continue to grow. Um, Given that it's a new category, I think there are a lot of fulfillment accelerate solutions out there that don't have specialized facilities for heavy, bulky items, or temperature control, or circular returns processing, or more like advanced kitting and customization. These are all things that I think this is where the industry is going, and I think specific providers like ShipBob are going. And I think um, some of these items, can be, I think, cause for excitement in the industry itself in terms of where we're going next. So I'm super excited to be here today, and looking forward to catching up with Drew.
Rick, thank you so much for walking us through the report. I've had a chance to go through it, and I hopefully everyone downloads it because I think it's full of insights and presents a very different way of running your supply chain that I think we are super excited about. So, Rick, maybe the first question I'll present to you is, I see it almost every day, which is brands when they are doing their own fulfillment, and when you present some sort of a solution like a fulfillment accelerator, it is like, how can I build trust? Or how can I simply trust another provider? How quickly can I really achieve the results that you're promising? How am I sure that I will not outgrow the solution that you're offering? Like, are there other myths that you came across when you were preparing for this report? And why do you think it's important for us? And what can we do to dispel some of the myths that most of these brands have?
Yeah, look, it's hard to evaluate. I don't care who you are. It's hard to evaluate a provider. And I think we had this conversation when we talked about it on our podcast. And I think one of the things you told me is inventory represents capital. Like you have so little capital and it's so important. Um, so I think things to evaluate are things like track record, who their other customers are. Can I visit the facility? Do they have a place I can go and see and touch my inventory? Do we have an account manager that stays with me? How accessible is that person? How visible and transparent is the software that I can log into any day? Or do I have to call someone on the phone just to figure out if they've received my new pallets for replenishment? And so I think a big part of it is track record and transparency. And that's really the things that um, software can um, can help with.
Makes sense. Got it. So a lot of key insights there. All right, maybe on a forward-looking trend now. I know we are down to the last 3 minutes or so. So over the next hour or so, we're going to dive into 12 sessions of Cyber Week data. And so, Rick, from your vantage point, you interact with so many different retailers, brands, supply chain companies. What are some of the biggest trends that you expect will shape the next year of e-commerce? Anything around social commerce and stuff that is on the fringes now, which hopefully you think might become mainstream?
Yeah, I think social commerce is a big one. We see TikTok Shop looking to gain traction in the United States in a way that I think other social commerce efforts have maybe not materialized as much as possible. TikTok has so much consumer attention. I think the use of influencers and entertaining content to drive commerce is super interesting on this platform because it has so much market share um, and consumer intent. So I think that's interesting. I also think that just good retail is coming back into vogue. Um, there have been, over the past 5 years, there have been so much investor and consumer emphasis on e-commerce. Now that consumers are back in the stores, they're gravitating toward the better experiences. They're gravitating toward better offers, better price points, higher quality products. And so don't overlook the importance of retail because it's hard to acquire a customer online. I mean, you have to pay a lot of fees to Google and Meta and all these players. Consumers are in stores. They're shopping on the shelf. And so in addition to marketplaces, retail is probably the next best way to acquire customers in an efficient way.
Right. So retail is not dead from
Retail
your.
is not dead. Yes.
All right, awesome. Maybe we have another minute, so maybe I'll throw in another question for you. And so, Rick, as brands are planning for 2024, um, you know, and they think about plans around omni-channel, to your point, retail, e-commerce, etc. Are there tips or like why do you think like for brands who are on the edge of like should we make a big change or not? Should we continue on the path that we're already on? Any words that you would say is like, hey, make that change in 2024. It is important for 2024 to be a transformational year.
Yeah. Um, I would say 2023, I think what opened the eyes of a lot of people is there are a lot of people missing their revenue forecast, but they still had to hit their bottom line targets. And so supply chain costs became a big area of focus for companies. How can I get inventory closer to the consumer, and as a result, reduce my carrier costs, um, and my time in transit, and improve my customer experience at the same time? So those are the things that I would be looking for. Um, is how do I gain more leverage over my supply chain costs?
Well, that wraps it up for us on this session. Thank you all for tuning in for our keynote with Rick and CEO of ShipBob, Dhruv. We'll see you all at the next session, headed by Brittany Barron, our Director of Product. See you there.